Welcome to the torahbirthing podcast. My name is Batya Khan. I'm a Kala teacher and birth educator, and my mission is to help you have an awesome transition into motherhood so you could fulfill your tafkid with support and recognize the power that you have. The Torah is not just history. It's the guide for our lives, and it's a great way to work on mindset too. It's important to know, it's important to learn. Are you ready? Let's do this. Welcome back to the podcast. When I'm currently recording it this week, it is Parshas Shemais, and we get a glimpse into what it was like having midwives in Mitzrayim. There were midwives before mentioned in Torah, and their skills were incredibly unique, and it is a very interesting thing to explore for sure. But I wanted to jump in to talking about the things that we learn actually from this week's Parsha on the midwives. And I wanted to talk about our history with midwifery and what women knew and the wisdom that we always had and how we can actually reclaim it. And I also wanted to talk about why you should actually think about, seriously consider, and strongly think about the possibility of choosing midwives over an OB-GYN, an obstetrician, as your provider for your birth, because midwives have lots of benefits. Okay, so let's go back a bit in history, and we'll be back in Mitzrayim. And in Mitzrayim, as we know, right? So the story of Shifra and Puah, Miriam and Yocheved, and the reasons why they were called those names, right? Shifra, because she would beautify the baby, and Puah, because she would coo to the child and make them calm and happy. And they would really take care of their mothers with so much devotion and so much care. So it is very, very cool to really think about all of the knowledge that they used to have then in Mitzrayim. So in Mitzrayim, way back when, the king of Mitzrayim, Parah, he wanted to get rid of the whole Jewish people. And he was trying to think of so many ways to do it, as we know. And one of the ways that he chose to do it was an indirect way, and to get rid of the Redeemer that he saw in the stars, to get rid of Moshe before he would even be born. So there was a special secret that wasn't known, and that was actually known then. Scientifically, it doesn't make sense now, but Parah was actually asking the midwives. When he asked them, he said, can you take these babies before they're born, figure out if it's a boy or if it's a girl, and make them be actually stillborn? So not just to actually kill the babies, to actually just know before and make that baby be born sleeping. So this is what Parah said. When you see on the avnayim, when you see on the birth stool, if it's a boy, then you should kill it. If it's a girl, then you should let it live. That's how Parah phrases it. So when the woman was actually pushing the position of the baby, we don't know how this makes sense, but the Mefarshim say that the position of the baby was actually showing how and what gender the baby would be. So boys were in a certain position, facing a certain way, and girls were facing the other way. And obviously we see now that this doesn't actually turn up in reality, like there isn't that way to predict the baby, but somehow this was true then. So the midwives were able to use their hands-on techniques to feel and know and map the baby's position, which they can actually also do today. You can ask your midwife, if you have one, to actually help you belly map, to visualize your baby. And these midwives would be able to know based on that if it's a boy and if it's a girl. And Puah asked them to get rid of the boys. And so this is what the midwives were tasked to do. And obviously we know that they didn't listen to Puah and that they feared Hashem, and they actually took care of the babies and went above and beyond. And even when a baby was sick and was gonna die, they used all of their powers in midwifery. And we'll talk about some cool cases in midwifery in a few minutes, but they used everything they had, all of their tools, and they davened, right? So these were big tzedkaniyas, and they actually asked Hashem to change the decree, and so many more boys survived and thrived, and families were prospering as much as possible in their situation of slavery in Mitzrayim. So Puah called the midwives back and he asked them, like, why did you do this? Why did you actually make these babies live? So the midwives' response was very interesting. They said, Ki chayais heina, beterem tavai alehem hamiyalades ve'yaladu. So the Mefarshim go into these words in so much detail. And the translations, they vary. So Rashi actually explains two things. He says that the Jewish women, they just know how to give birth and they do it on their own. They are just like animals, chayais. They are just like animals in the field. They don't need any help to give birth. And another level that he says, chayais is another word for midwives. That the Jewish women are midwives in their own right. So Shifra and Puah were saying, if we actually determine the baby's position and make all the boys look stillborn, they're going to be onto what we do. And they're going to know that we used the ability to figure out, based on the position of the baby, what the baby is. And then we're just going to lose all of our business. Nobody is going to call us, and we're going to lose our whole financial livelihood. So they had a very convincing and compelling argument for Puah. And that's what these midwives did. And that's what midwives do today, is they empowered Jewish women so that they were able to feel comfortable and confident in their bodies and be able to either just be as free to birth like animals, or that they would have all the knowledge that a midwife actually has so they could actually do it for themselves, right? Because every single one of the Jewish women were actually midwives in their own right, in their knowledge, in their expertise. And obviously, even a midwife should have a midwife. So they definitely did call the midwives and have Shifra and Puah help them out with their births, or someone else from Shifra and Puah's team, because there are opinions that they were just the head midwives of the Jewish women. So that is a lot of babies to take care of. So they definitely had support, and they gave their all to the Jewish women. And they definitely empowered them to know and be familiar with their bodies to the extent that they were able to do it by themselves, and they still did it with support. So from there, we totally can get a glimpse into the age-old wisdom and the beauty that is in midwife and midwifery care. Okay? So it is so cool to actually look into some of the things that midwives used to be able to do with their hands. So one specific midwife that I want to talk about, that I want to share about, is a certain midwife who actually was able to do something crazy cool. So it was in a time that was before C-sections. So it was basically in the late 1600s to 1700s, and there was a midwife named Katharina Schrader. And she had to help support all of these births and all of these women. And there were no C-sections in that time. C-sections hadn't been invented yet. And if a C-section would be done, then she would definitely lose the mother. So there is a certain scenario. It's called a placenta previa. So this is when the placenta is fully or almost fully covering the cervix. So that basically the placenta will be born first and then the baby will be born after. So this situation is dangerous first and foremost for the baby and also for the mother, because the mother can lose a lot of blood in labor and it would be a very dangerous situation for her to give birth. So this thing is overdiagnosed, and a lot of times when it is diagnosed early on in pregnancy, the placenta will actually move a little bit up out of the way. It's attached to the wall, but like the way it grows, it'll not end up being in the way when it's time for birth. So it is very important to look into if you do get diagnosed with this, and to make sure to find out what is really going to be a problem for trying a vaginal birth. But in those times, they didn't even have the option of C-section to help women when there was a true situation of previa, and it would be actually dangerous for a woman to give birth. So what Katharina had to do as a midwife is she learned, after losing a mother in this situation, which Baruch Hashem, we don't have to deal with these days, she learned how to quickly deliver these babies with her hands-on techniques and help women so that they wouldn't die in these births. And she saved a lot of women and babies. And so midwifery was always a special art that required a lot of knowledge, quick thinking, and hands-on techniques. And this is something that we started losing more and more and more. So midwives, because they have so much knowledge and so much hands-on techniques, still even today, the midwives who trained under the real authentic midwives and passed it on to each other, they have lower rates of interventions and of C-sections because they actually give time and they have space and they give knowledge to these mothers. In your average OB appointment, you're going to have about like on average of 7 minutes at an appointment. And there is so much that is going on in your body and so much that you want to talk about and speak about and think about. And your care is personalized because you're a whole person. This is not just a medical process. This is like a whole life-changing process that you're going through. And there is so much more emphasis on understanding your body and understanding the decisions that you're making and you feeling confident in your own decisions. And there is an increased likelihood that if you want to go without an epidural, you're going to have that option. And midwives are more likely to rely on their hands and their brains and their thought process and their understanding of the fact that a normal labor can go way longer than it would on a clock. And they are just able to use hands-on techniques and rely less on machines. Obviously, it's amazing that we have machines now, and we do want to work on it together. And these midwives usually offer more flexibility and more options when it comes to planning birth. And they truly try to connect with their clients, with their patients, with their women on a more emotional level and be more supportive. So a lot of women have a lot of questions about midwives. Like, there is a lot of misinformation that goes around. So some people think that midwives are the same thing as doulas. So first of all, let's talk about the difference between midwives and doulas. So midwives are trained medical professionals, there's different ways that they actually could learn to be midwives. There's nurse midwives that were first nurses and then became midwives. There's direct entry midwives. It's always important to look into how your midwife became a midwife and if she is properly trained and actually knows what she's doing and is actually good. It's good to ask around. It's good to find out. It's good to ask for references if you feel the need. And it's important to really look into it and to know what it actually is. So midwives are more similar to obstetricians. They're more similar to OBGYNs. And doulas are just support women. So it's cool how the midwife role in the times of Mitzrayim was like actually a combo of a midwife and a doula, because midwives have that support element to them. And the doulas today are just the support. So they're not doing anything medical. We're not doing anything medical. We're just going to help you understand your options and be confident and comfortable and as happy as possible giving birth, and just helping you have that best experience possible. But when you're comparing midwives to OBGYNs, they went through 4 years of medical school and then 4 years of their specialty training. So if they decided after medical school that they want to become part of delivering babies, they want to go into obstetrics, then that's what they do. So a lot of these people go in to their field not knowing what they want to actually do. And then they learn that you could have surgery and you could also deal with healthy women and delivering babies. And they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And everybody has their own story of how they get there, obviously. But they are the experts in higher risk births and they are the experts in surgery. Yes, they can do lower risk birth, but midwives are specially there for that. And some people ask, so midwives are for home births? Yeah. No. So midwives can, some of them do home births. Absolutely. Birth centers, yes. And also, a lot of midwives practice in hospitals. So even if you're like, I for sure want an epidural in the hospital, you can still choose a midwife for your lower risk birth and have all the benefits of that. You can ask the midwife, if I need a C-section for some reason, what's that going to look like? Who's the doctor? Can I do some research into them? And you can totally know and understand what your options are with that. It is such an important thing. And there are so many diverse options for if your labor and your birth becomes higher risk and if you need more interventions. But for a low risk woman, starting off with a midwife can be so beneficial and give you so many lower tech skills that you might not have with an obstetrician who will know you less. And I personally see a big difference in the births that I've been to with midwives versus obstetricians. Yes, even in the hospital, it is vastly, vastly different what a midwife is doing for her client and how much more she knows and how much more connected she is and how much more trusting she is in Hashem's process. So I really think that this is something that is totally, totally worth considering and just something to think about. So I just find that it is such a cool thing how our history of midwifery dating back even before Mitzrayim is just something that we can totally see the remnants of nowadays, and we can totally use and totally benefit from those things now. And this is why I think it is so important for every single woman to consider a midwife birth and to have a midwife at their birth, because midwives are so much more likely to understand that they do not have the control of the birth, that they are not the ones in charge, that Hashem is the one in charge. I actually heard a midwife telling me, when is labor going to start? I don't know. Some things you just clearly see that God is in this world. And she wasn't even Jewish. And so you definitely want your midwife or your obstetrician to believe in Hashem and to have that relationship and not to think that they are the one who controls life and death and birth. And that is something that I want you to be able to bring into your own birth. So if you want to know and get steps of how to bring this into your own birth, and if you don't have full knowledge and you want to feel fully confident that this is the right midwife or this is the right obstetrician for you, there is still time to get onto the wait list for Torahbirthing Academy. So what I do with this program is I walk through the exact process of how you can become the creator queen that you really are for your birth. Because you are a full-on partner with Hashem in creating this child. And you're going to be able to learn everything that you need to know to feel fully confident and supported in all of your choices. So, like Shifra and Puah and the Jewish women, you are fully capable and worthy of knowing everything you have to know for your birth. So, like Shifra and Puah said, you can totally be just like a midwife. You can totally have all of the knowledge and still have that support from a doula, from a midwife, or from the right obstetrician. And obviously, if you're choosing a midwife, it should be the right midwife. So make sure of that. And you can know and understand so much about yourself. Be so in tune with your body. Be so in tune with your mind. Be so in tune and connected to Hashem in your own experience. And you deserve this and you are worth it. So I'm so looking forward to seeing you inside, and click the link below and you will be able to get access. I would love to hear what you think. Message me on Instagram @torahbirthing or send me an email, torahbirthing@gmail.com.